Offer asher yiyah, it says from the offer, from the dust that you will. The pasuk says yikach hakoyin. So Melamed, this teaches us, the Brisa says shahim mesakin mibachutz, that they would bring offer from outside, umachnis, and they would bring it and put it into the mishkan. Then the pasuk says bekarka hamishkan. And the pasuk says bekarka hamishkan. So l'cheira, it's extra. If it says asher yiyah, why does it say bekarka hamishkan? So he says Isi ben Yehuda Emer bekarka hamishkan. Isi ben Yehuda Emer. Isi ben Yehuda says it's lahavi. Turn over to Daf Tazayin Amud Aleph. Shilei Neiv Givin is to teach me at Shilei Neiv Givin ubeis elamim, and also beis elamim, that the dust of the Sotah is still brought from the ground of the Shilei Neiv Givin, even after the Jewish people are no longer in the desert. Now, there was 14 years that the Yidden, after they went into Eretz Yisrael, so they had the Mishkan Shilei, and that was there for 369 years, until the Plishtim destroyed it. And then the Mishkan Noiv was built, that was destroyed, then given, and then the Beis Elamim was Yerushalayim. So he's telling us, according to Yisrael ben Yehuda, he's telling us that it's being marbe these places. Yisrael ben Menachem says, "Any tzarich l'Torah does not need to tell me about the Beis Hamikdash." Why? Because it's a kal v'chemer. Ma tuma kala if by a light tuma. Somebody goes into the tuma. Somebody goes into the Beis Hamikdash while he's in a state of tummy. So lechalak hakosif, the Torah didn't make a difference between a mishkan and a mishkan, right? Because the Torah says, "As mishkan Hashem timei ki Hashem mikdash Hashem timei." So tumas eshesish chamura. So for sure, when it comes to the tuma of eshesish of a married woman, the Sotah, like kol shekain, for sure there should be no difference between the mishkan and the mikdash. So therefore, imkein matam lemer bekarka mishkan. So what do I do with the extra words karka mishkan? According to Yisrael ben Menachem, shlo yavi mitech kupasei, that a person should not bring the dust from his own basket and place it directly into the water. He must first place it on the floor and then put it into the basket. Okay. So they asked the Shaila, there was a Shaila which was risen, Ein Sham offer. What if in this Amal Amma there's no offer there? There's no dust. So we said before, you can't go ahead and actually shovel it. So the halach, so the question was, Ma'o she'yitin efer, can you go ahead and put ashes in the place, in the water? So the Gemara says this, Ali ba de Beis Shammai tiboylach. According to Beis Shammai, there's for sure no question. The Omri, because Beis Shammai says in another place, Efer shekar offer. The Efer and offer, even though it sounds very similar, but it's different. Efer is ashes, offer is dust. The Torah says it has to be dust. You can't put Efer there, you can't put the dust, you can't put ashes. Kiti boylach aliba de Beis Hillel. So what's the Shaila? The Shaila is according to Beis Hillel. The Omri matzinu Efer shekar offer, that according to Beis Hillel, there is times that Efer is called offer. So do we say, and we'll explain that in a minute. So the question is, Afagav, the Ikri offer, do I say that even though sometimes Efer is called offer, but Hacha bekarka mishkan ksiv, here it says that by the Sotah it has to be from the karka mishkan, which l'chayra would be memayit Efer, oidilma, or do I say no? The karka mishkan, the Torah says karka mishkan, like Yisrael ben Yehuda, and like Yisrael ben Menachem would asi, which taught us, like we said, something else, either about the Beis Elamim, Neiv Givin, or Kal V'chemer, or Shelo Yavi Mitech Kupasei. So maybe Efer and offer will work according to Beis Hillel. So the Gemara says, Toshma, come and bring a raya from the following Brisa. He says, okay, so basically, what's the case of Efer and offer? So we're going to learn, this is by the Kisi Hadam. There's a halacha that you have to, when you shech something, you have to cover the blood, either a chaya and eif. That's called Kisi Hadam. So the Gemara in Chulin, Daf Pechesam and Beis, has a machlekes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, if you could be Makai in this mitzvah with Efer. The Para Aduma as well, the pasuk says, V'lochul atomim afar sreifas achatos. So the question is, when it says offer, is it offer mamish, or is it Efer as well? So according to Beis Hillel, you could bring to cover the blood, you can cover Afer, and Beis Shammai says no. It has to be Afar Sreif, it has to be Mamish Afar. Okay? So now the question is, in Sotah, according to Beis Hillel, who by Kisei Hadam will say that Afer is called Afar, does it work over here as well? And the Gemara's question was, do I say that since it says Karka Mishkan, it's going to be Memai, it has to be Mamish from the Karka Mishkan, so Afer doesn't come from Karka Mishkan, or Karka Mishkan teaches me something else, like we brought from the Braisa, like the way that Isi ben Yehuda touched it up, or Isi ben Menachem. So the Gemara says, Toshma, Damar Rabbi Yechanan, Mishum Bishmo, Bishleishim Mekemes Halacha Keves Mikra. There are 3 instances where the halacha basically supersedes the pasuk. In other words, the pasuk says one thing, and halacha Meishim Sinai tells us to do something more or opposite. Now, what's that case? So he says, one of the 3 places in the Brisa which says this din of halacha ikeves hamikra. Number 1, Hatera Omra. The Torah says like we said, by kisei dam chay and oif be'ofer, that you have to cover it with dust. The halacha, and what's the halacha Meishim Sinai? Bechol davar, you can use anything which grows. You can cover it with sawdust. There's a lot of different materials. Rashi brings down over there. You can use in the Gemara Nechulin Taf Beches. You can use a lot of other materials. Now, so what do we see? That the Torah says it has to be ba'ofer, and halacha Meishim Sinai tells me it could be a lot of other things. Another case, Hatera Amra Betar. The Torah says by a nazir that the nazir has to shave himself with a razor. The pasuk says, "Kol yimei neder nizrei tar lo yavra al reishei." That you can't. That you cannot shave. The nazir cannot shave with a razor. The halacha and the halacha Meishim Sinai says b'chol davar, even with scissors or anything that cuts, you can't use. Third case, Hatera Amra. The Torah says in regards to a get, the Torah says sefer. It says v'kosav la sefer krisis, has to be mamish a sefer. When you say sefer, it's like a book. And the halacha, what's the halacha? The halacha is b'chol davar. You could use, it says in the Gemara in Gittin, Daf Yutes, you could use alizayis, you could use different materials to write a get. So now he says, Vim Isa, if it's really true that Afer is called Ofer, that you could use Afer, if you don't have Ofer, you could use Afer, so then Lech Shiv Nami Hai. Rabbi Shmuel should include also and say that the Torah says it has to be Ofer, but the halacha Meishim Sinai say Keres to Samikra and says you could use as well Afer. So the fact that Rabbi Shmuel does not list these that even though the Torah says Ofer, you could use Afer as an example of Shloishim Mekemes halacha Keves Hamikra, it must be that you cannot use Afer b'makim Ofer. So the Gemara says no. Tana v'shir. This is a typical answer. The Gemara, Tana v'shir means that some he taught and some he omitted. In other words, Rabbi Shmuel brought 3 examples, but he's not telling you every single example. So the Gemara says, fine. Uma shir, the high shir. So what's another example that he omitted? So you're saying he didn't really halacha is a keves mikra. Why didn't he list it? He didn't list many things. So the Gemara says, okay, which other things did he not list? So he says, shir mitzera, that he omitted the halacha of mitzera. What's the halacha of mitzera? In this week's parsha, the Tanya, we learned in a brisa that the mitzera has to, after the mitzera gets better, so it has to have something called a tiglachas shniya. It's a second shaving. The pasuk says, "Vayikra b'yem hashvi yigalach es kol se'eri v'esreish v'eskone v'esgapis eina v'eskol se'eri yigalach." On the 7th day, it has to shave the hair and the head and the eyebrows and all its hair. So Rabbi Shmuel says like this: "V'hoya b'yem hashvi yigalach es kol se'orei." When the Torah says the words that it will be on the 7th day, you shall shave off his hair. So that's a klal. That's a general. We have a klal, upratu klal. That's a general. You're being very general. You're saying that on the 7th day you should shave all the hair. It doesn't say where. Now then the pasuk says it's roshei eskonei v'esgabes einav. The Torah says it should be the head. It should be his beard, his eyebrows. So it's specific. It's a prat. He was mefaret. He says a general rule and then he says a klal. Then in the same pasuk it says again v'eskol se'er yigalach. It says that even all his hair you shall shave off. So that we have a din, like we read every day in the morning, klal, by karbanis, klal uprat klal. This is the famous din of you have a klal, a general, then it's specific, and then it's general. So what's the din by klal uprat klal? Ma prat meferet. So just like the pratim which are explained in the pasuk, what's the prat? Whenever you have a klal uprat klal, ilat adon elakein prat. So what's the specific in the klal over here? Is mokim. It's if you think into it, it's mokim kinis seir v'nira. It's a place where that it's areas which you see, and the hair is collected. So too, af kol. So whenever it says kol se'eri galach, is makim kinis seir v'nira. It has to be a collection of hair which is visible. So what do I see? I see that the klal upratu klal tells me that dafki hair which is visible, the mitzvah has to shave. So the Gemara says, okay, so that's a din. I see that the pasuk, I mean, the klal upratu klal says one din, and the halacha Meseches Sota tells me something else. So the Gemara says, "My Rabbi." So what does it extend to? What does it marbe? So he says, Rabbi, seir raglayim. It extends to the pubic hairs. In that place, umay miyit, and what will be mimay that you don't have to shave? The klal upratu klal is miyit. The beis hashechi is the hair of the armpits. With the kule gufay and body hair, which is not collected. So that's the pashta pshat how to learn. Now, the hilchasa, what's the halacha? The halacha Meseches Sota tells me megaleach kedlas, that the mitzvah has to shave mamish like the entire body has to be shaved. The time we learned in a Mishnah in the Goyim tells us that bo loy lahakef mitzvah, when the kohen comes to shave the mitzvah, maver tara kol psari, he has to pass a razor over all his flesh. Now, uktani b'seifa, what did the seifa say? Ubayem hashvi megalchay tiglachas shniya kidiglachas lishena. That on the seventh day, when the mitzvah has to shave, he shaves it a second time, like the first time. So what do I see from here? We see again, like the halacha Meseches Sota is a keres mashmos pasuk, and nevertheless, Rabbi Shmuel doesn't mention it. So it must be that here's one example. My mitzvah. Rabbi Shmuel doesn't mention it, and he doesn't mention also by the case of Sotah that offer an afer, that you could use an afer, but I'm making offer. So the Gemara, Rabbi Nachman says, no, you can't bring a raya from Tana V'Shir from Taglachas Mitzvah. Why? When does Rabbi Shmuel tell me? List the cases of halacha ikeres mikra, halacha ikeres mikra. In other words, when the Torah says clearly, mashal, let's say by the get, the Torah says sefer, or let's say by the razor, the Torah says tar or offer. So it says clearly. Pasuk says one thing. The halacha now is a keves the mikra, but hacha in the case of mitzvah, that's not halacha. Halacha Meseches Sota is not a mefurish to pasuk. He learns it a keves midrabanan. That a keves is midrabanan. In other words, the halacha Meseches Sota is a drabanan thing. If it's a drabanan thing, you can't bring a raya to something which deiraisa the halacha is a keves hamikra. Papa says, another answer to Rabbi Nachman. Ki kachashiv, when does Rabbi Shmuel mention in the case halacha oikeves ve'oikeres, that when the pasuk uproots, the mashma is a pasuk. But in the case of the mitzvah, oikeves umeisevasi, it adds. So what he's saying is that when Papa is saying like this, when does Rabbi Shmuel mention it? When it supersedes and uproots the straightforward meaning of the pasuk. Now this l'chayra is supersedes and adds. The halacha does not overrule the pasuk in the case of klal upratu klal, but rather it adds. In other words, in the case over there, let's say to take the case of the tar. The Torah says that you can't be mitar, and the Torah says, but he can't use other materials as well. So that's that he's oikeves veikeres. Mashenkein over here, he's oikeves umeisefes, that the whole body has to be shaved. Okay, Rabashi says another answer. Rabashi says, Mani, who is our brisa like Rabbi Shmuel? The brisa is Rabbi Shmuel. Now, Rabbi Shmuel is the Dorish Klali Prati. Rabbi Shmuel, he darshans the Klal Prat. Now, when the Mishnah over there says that the Mitzera has to shave like a kedelas. What is that? Who is that like? Rabbi Akiva. This is like Rabbi Akiva, the Dorish. Where Rabbi Akiva is dashing Rebuye Me'ute. You have the Riboy and you have the Miut. You have like how it amplifies something, and then how it restricts it. The time we learned in a brisa, another brisa, it says, "V'haya bayem hashvi yigalachas kol seirei." So it says, the pasuk we quoted, that on the seventh day we shall shave his hair, which is a riba, which is being marbe, that he has to shave the whole hair. As reishav eskenim esgabe was a miut. So it's saying only these you have to shave, and then it says v'skol seirei yigalachas riba. So that's called you have a riboy, miut riboy. So he says, ribo, miut, ribo. Whenever you have a ribo, a miut, riboy, riba hakoil, it's going to be marba everything. Riba de kula gufa, so which means it's going to include the entire body. Uma miut, and then so what's it being mimayit? So he says it's going to be mimayit seir shebasech achaytem, the nose hair. In other words, the nose hair doesn't have to be shaved. So since the Mishnah presents only the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, it doesn't pose a challenge to Rabbi Shmuel, because we're not talking about Rabbi Shmuel, we're talking about Rabbi Akiva. Anyway, well, you could speak a lot about this. It's a little bit more deeper than what I'm saying, but the time doesn't allow it. So that's simple pshat. Okay, so now the Gemara says tachlis. My have what's the conclusion over here? Can ashes be used instead of dust for the water of the Sotah? So he says like this: Tashma, come in here. If there's no dust available for the Sotah water, then maybe rakbuvis yorek. So then the kohen can bring this decomposed vegetable, or mekadesh, and he could be mekadesh the water with it. So what does this teach us? That you can substitute, if you don't have offer, you can substitute with something else. So the bepashtus, you could use afer if you don't have offer. So the Gemara says, no, this is not a good raya. Rakbuvis yorek offer. At the end of the day, these decomposed vegetables it will become dust. Afer, but when it comes to ashes, offer doesn't become dust. Okay. The Mishnah said that he would take loose dust from underneath the tablet, place it into a keli. This keli of water. There's a machlekes how much water you have to put in. And the Mishnah says, "Kidei shiro hamayim," in order that the dust would be visible on the water. So the Gemara says, "Taran Rabbanan," we learned in a brisa, "Shloisha tzrichin shiro." There are three things that you need to actually see the item in the water. One is afar seita, the dust of the seita, efer para, by the dust of the para aduma, and v'reik of the yavama, the spit of the yavama, by the chalitza has the spit, so that you have to actually see it. Shmuel says, not only that, av dam tzipur shel metzera, also the blood of the metzera, when the metzera gets better and he has to shave and he has to shech the dam tzipur, so also it has in the kli it has to actually see the blood. The Gemara says, my time to Rabbi Shmuel. What's the reason why Rabbi Shmuel adds dam tzipur the chsiv? Because the pasuk says the toval oisam, you have to dip the tzipur achaya in eitz erez shnitelas ve'ezav. Then it says bedam hatzipur. It says you have to table it, the tzipur achaya, bedam hatzipur hashchut al mayim chayim. The Tanya we learned in a brisa, bedam, it says bedam hatzipur hashchut al yochel, you would think that only bedam, you only have to table it. You only have to table the eitz erez or shnitelas in actual blood. However, b'lei b'mayim, but not water. That's what the pasuk says. B'mayim, it has to be in water. Now, b'mayim yochel b'mayim v'lei b'dam, only the water, not the blood. That's what the Torah says. B'dam, it has to be the blood. So how does that work? Okay, it said maybe mayim. You bring water, shadam tzipur nikar behen, that you have to have water that you actually see the blood. Kama, and how much is that? That's Rivis. So that's Rabbi Shmuel's reasoning. According to the Rabbanan who argue on Rabbi Shmuel, and you don't need to have dam nikar by the case of the Mitzayra, he'll tell you no. Hahu legufei. Over there it's telling me that what? Achikamar. Atbel bedam uvamayim. The Torah is telling me that you have to table it when the water and the blood is mixed. And if the Torah would not say bedam tzipur hashchut ala mayim chayim, I would never know that. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel, according to Rabbi Shmuel, imkein if so lichted rechmana b'tavel bahem. Torah should say b'tavel bahem bedam b'mayim lamali. So why do you have to include the words b'mayim bedam b'mayim? So he says lenikar elamai that the dam has to be nikar in the mixture. And the Chacham, what do they do with that? So he says, if the Torah would have only said that has to be separate. To tell me that l'orvan you have to mix it up. So the Gemara goes back. Rabbi Shmuel, according to Rabbi Shmuel, l'orvan, he says to mix it up. I have another pasuk. I have another pasuk. Pasuk says v'shachat esatzipar ha'achas. The pasuk says v'shachat esatzipar ha'achos el kli cheres al ma'im chaim. V'rabbanan. The Chacham, what did he do with that taina? So he says, if from that alone, I would think the shachtei samach l'mana. I would think that you only could shecht it, in the kli. Ve'nin kitinu livridin. You have to hold on to the esophagus that the blood doesn't come out. And you have to accept the blood in another place. The pasuk tells me that no, that the mayim and the dam and the mayim have to be mixed in. Okay. If the bird was very, very big, so he says, what if the bird is so big and it contains such a large amount of blood that it basically it drowns the water. You push it, don't see it's so much blood. There's no water left of it. It drowns out the water. So and the mayim's not nicker. So or let's say you have katana or something which is small, a bird that's so small and contains so little blood, and its blood also v'nitches mipnei hamayim, and there's so much water that also drowns out the blood. So what's the din? So Amalei says, so the Bzeda tells him, didn't I not tell you that not to take yourself out of the bounds of practical halacha? In other words, don't ask, sometimes you ask these what if questions. What if this? He says, don't ask impossible questions. The Chachamim measured the ratio of blood and water specifically with a tzipur dror, a regular bird. There's no big enough water to drown out. Not in other words, there's no tzipur dror that will drown out the water, and it won't happen that there's so much blood that will drown out the water, or vice versa. Okay, we learned in our brayse hiktim offer lamayim. If one places, usually we said you need the mayim and then put the mayim on the offer. What if a person first placed the dust in the keli before the water? So the halacha is pasul according to Tanakama. The mixture is pasul. Shimon holds it's going to be kosher if you were makdim the offer before the mayim. The Gemara about my time. So the Gemara says my time to Rabbi Shimon. What's the reason why Rabbi Shimon holds that it is kosher? So he says the ksiv. The pasuk says in regards to the paraduma, it says, and from the unclean they shall take of the dust of the burning of the sreifas achatos. V'tanyam Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says v'chi offerhu, but is dust taken? We don't take dust, we take ashes. So why does the Torah alter the usage and use the lashon of afar if afer was taken? To tell us, it says offer over here. And it says by Sotah offer, just like over there, the offer by Sotah, the offer went on the mayim, afkan, offer al gabe mayim, so too, regards to the paraduma, the dust, the ashes must be placed on top of the water. And uma'akan hiktim offer lamayim, just like as here, by a paraduma, if one places the dust in the keli before the water, it's kosher. Aflahalan hiktim offer lamayim is kosher. So the Gemara says, and from there, with regards to paraduma, from where do we know that the mixture is fit, even if the dust is placed before the water? So he says, Trei kroi ksiv. The pasuk used two psukim. Ksiv olav. It's written that the water has to be put olav on top of it. Alma, what do we see? Afer bereisha. If it says olav, so it's mashma that the afer goes first. And then it says, Uksiv mayim chaim el keli, it says that the running water must be placed in a keli. So what do we see? The mayim bereisha. So what's first? Is it olav or mayim chaim al keli? So okay, it's a rotza zaneisen. If he wants, he could place this one first. If he could place this one first, but abonan. So the Gemara says, according to the Chachamim who say it's unfit, they say it like this: El keli. When the pasuk says El keli, it means specifically dafke. So in other words, the water has to be placed first. And when it says olav, when it says on it l'orvan, you have to mix it up. So the Gemara asks, "Ve'ema olav dafke." So the Gemara says, why not just say that olav means bedafke, And El Keli means shitehei chiyusim bekli, that the water must run directly into the keli and not be brought from spring by means of another keli. So the Gemara says, Ma matzina b'chomokim machshir l'mayla. Just as we find every instance that we're machshir l'mayla, in other words, in the case of Sotah, the dust goes on top of the water. Afkan machshir l'mayla. So too in the case of the paraduma, the water must be placed first. It has to go on top, and then the ashes. Okay, Mitzvah Hashem, 2:00 we'll do Yud Zayin, the Mishnah. Yeah.